With Vampire Survivors releasing on mobile last month and inspiring a new subgenre of roguelike survival games, which is now called horde games by the way, it's no surprise that we already have a bunch of Vampire Survivors clones trying to copy that formula. While it's absolutely a must for you to try the original game on mobile since it's completely free and you can directly download it on TapTap, we also did some more digging and found another 6 similar games that are not complete trash and absolutely worth your time and attention. Opening our list with the least successful but still solid, Super Wizard, with a player score of 7.1. It's a title that blends the core of Vampire Survivors with gacha elements. Super Wizard is a pretty fantastic spin on the horde game concept. There are currently 15 different themed stages to work through, which unlock one by one, with settings ranging from a fiery volcano to a castle floating in space. Super Wizard also features a huge amount of artifacts to collect and spells to learn during a run. The best part is that if you properly level up the right spells, you can actually create super powerful fusion skills that blend the properties of 2 abilities. For example, combining an electric ring with a fireball to create a burning loop, an even more powerful skill that destroys everything on its way. The only annoying part about Super Wizard is its over-reliance on ads for monetization. But basically, if you're looking for a Vampire Survivors clone that will last you for a long time, then this one will do quite well. Next on our list is Magic Dungeon, with a player score of 7.9. This is probably the least polished looking of all the games that we tested, but it has some really cool ideas. It also leans more heavily into the gacha elements with more than 30 potential characters to unlock. Magic Dungeon's overall look is a little more amateurish, almost like something thrown together in RPG Maker. But once you get in, the game actually controls quite well. It also uses a clever day and night cycle where monsters spawn in greater and more aggressive numbers at night, providing a more interesting marker for progress than simply how many minutes you've survived. Next up, and increasing in quality of presentation, is Lonely Survivor, with a pretty high player score of 9.2. Though it uses ads like Super Wizard, the game doesn't rely on them quite as much and doesn't offer a way to get rid of them for good. But it also offers a slightly more aesthetically pleasing art style and a frankly absurd numbers of powers to play with. One other great element that Lonely Survivor introduces is the ability to morph your spells into infinitely more destructive ultimate forms. Reaching that level can really set a run apart from doomed to a complete success, as these ultimate skills can do an insane amount of screen clearing damage. All in all, Lonely Survivor has the same shortcomings as any of the more free-to-play monetization focused games, but it handles that monetization more elegantly and feels less like it's punishing players who won't pay real money. Despite its generic name, the best of the more monetization-heavy horde games is definitely Survivor.io. With a player score of 8.4, this game feels like the model for the previous 3 games. It does everything each of those titles does, and in most cases, it does it with more flair and style. For one, Survivor.io features a ton of variety in its levels. The game currently boasts a whopping 40 stages, with more being added all the time. Survivor.io's best feature is its sleek, cartoony look. It's not like there is a ton of detail in the graphics or anything, but the player character is simple and emotive, and the variety of enemies is plentiful. The arsenal you bring to bear against these baddies has more of a modern military vibe. Think rocket launchers, Molotov cocktails, MP grenades, and so on. And the game regularly unlocks new toys to play with as you work through its many levels. Yes, Survivor.io also makes use of all the microtransaction tricks, but missing out on these ad rewards doesn't feel especially painful, and the game also regularly gives out free bonuses first. So if you're really not in the mood for sitting through ads, you will still get something. Of everything on this list, this is the one I can see myself sticking with the longest, depending on how the developer chooses to expand the game and how heavily they will lean into further monetization. Next on our list is 20 Minutes Till Dawn, one of the most well-liked horde games on TapTap with a player score of 9.5. 20 Minutes Till Dawn employs a gorgeous green and red aesthetic that gives it a very stark style. As the name suggests, your goal is to survive a mere 20 minutes using just your guns and your wits to ward off the encroaching forces of darkness. It's worth noting that 20 Minutes Till Dawn is almost definitely the most difficult of all the games on this list. Unlike most horde games, there is no autofire here. Each of the game's 7 primary weapons come with its own ammo size and reload speed, which means you have to choose when to fire by tapping a fire button on the right hand side of the screen. Because of its slightly more demanding mechanics and a more complicated series of skills that also require careful choices, 20 Minutes Till Dawn isn't quite as pick-and-play friendly as the other games on this list. The trade-off though is that there is a much higher skill ceiling in this game. Learning the feel of different weapons, the patterns of enemies, and the best upgrade choices in each run can lead to hugely successful and satisfying runs. And the game's unbelievable 15 levels of difficulty settings play into that focus on skill over spectacle. Speaking of spectacle, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. This will greatly help us to create more videos like this. Okay, we've saved the best for last, and this is a very special one. For the whole of this video, we've been referring to these games as Vampire Survivors clones. But if you heard of this new genre of horde games, you know that it's not quite accurate. Vampire Survivors developer Luca Galante has been very upfront about how he was directly inspired by a specific Android game called Magic Survival. Released all the way back in 2019 and with a player score of 9.6 on TapTap, Magic Survival has received over 5 million downloads, and it deserves every one of them and more. Though the art style is simple, most of the enemies are black and red blobs, and the player character is just a vaguely wizard-shaped scribble, but the gameplay is as perfectly tense and utterly addictive as Vampire Survivors itself. One of the strongest suits of Magic Survival is how balanced, effective, and satisfying each spell type feels. There are also 24 starting classes to choose between, which mostly just change what abilities you start with, but that's enough to provide some flavor to each run. It's no surprise that the creator of Vampire Survivors was so drawn into this game that he wanted to emulate it, and it's no surprise that this emulation has become a massive hit. Magic Survival truly feels like the start of an addictive new genre of games, but it's a beginning that doesn't feel sloppy or underdeveloped. The horde games of the future are sure to find new and exciting ways to expand on the formula that is established here, but going back to where it all started is always going to be worthwhile. And that's it for our list of 6 games that are sure to scratch your itch for flavor in this new horde game genre. Tell us in the comments what's your favorite game of this type, and check out this video to find out what games went under the radar in 2022.